We also shouldn't forget that the quality of smaller sensor footage has become also a lot better over the last 10 years while we were not looking at it. You know what I mean? We were only, like we, meaning us and a lot in the audience, were only focusing on larger sensors, maybe micro four thirds and up. In the meantime, a lot has happened on the smaller sensor side as well. So the technology for higher light sensitivity, but also lower noise, and noise is a big one, has advanced a lot.
What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD newsroom with Nino and Johnnie Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome to episode 27 of CineD Focus Check. And Johnny's back.
Johnny's back. Nino, how are you?
Good. It's nice to not have a little bit of a delay when we're talking.
Yeah, actually, no delay. And when I came back yesterday, I think, so a little bit still jet-lagged, but no more sweat, no more heat. You know, it's like crazy how hot it was. And the journey, I have to say, I'm always still surprised going on an aeroplane and 9 to 15 hours later landing elsewhere. It's always such a relief. The more I fly, the more I hate it. But on the other hand, it's like, it's amazing. You what? You go into something, into a metal thing, big wings, a lot of fuel in it, and just pray that you land up.
Better not think about how thin the walls are. Yeah. True.
But yeah, so I'm back, and it's really great to be back in our office and the studio and see you guys, and of course talk about everything that we missed, since last week? Quite a lot.
Well, actually quite longer, because last week we talked to Victor. So that's anybody true. Who has missed that episode, really big recommendation to listen to last week's episode. I think it's one of the best ones we've had so far, because Victor Ha is just an amazing guy. And he's head of the
marketing in...
kind of marketing in the US. It's a very long title for Fujifilm. And he's also a photographer himself, and it's just a very, very interesting person to talk to.
Most important, he's very passionate about what he's doing. And when you have the drive, you can see this immediately. You can see when the person is really interested in what he's doing and how much he likes our industry.
And this is not a talk that was too much about only Fujifilm stuff. That's I think important to point out. It's not like a promo thing. It's really kind of behind the scenes of what he thinks where the market is going and stuff. Yeah. So if you missed that, please listen to last week's or watch last week's episode. Also quite a lot of comments and quite, a lot of opinions here. Good. Today, just to summarize what we'll talk about, we actually haven't talked about news in the last few weeks, mainly because, it's summer and the news are, of course, a little bit slow. We are heading into September, which is always a very busy month in terms of news. So the IBC is around the corner. We are very hard at work preparing for that, going there with a big team, as usual, covering a lot of news and covering a lot of new product releases. Yeah. But of course, there were still some announcements which were quite significant over the last few weeks, and we're going to go through the topics today. And first of all, our dear colleague Gunther Machu released a little wildlife documentary that he shot on the LUMIX G9 Mark II, which is kind of also the review of that camera, kind of a real-world review. And Gunther, I think for people who don't know, he's the guy who is behind our lab tests. He's a very technical mind. He's a PhD, and he's a very precise guy, but also has a very good eye, even though he's not a professional filmmaker, like he's not earning his living with it. But he really he's traveling a lot for work all around the world. And that's actually how we met him many, many years ago. And because he basically got in touch with us like, oh, you guys are in Vienna, I'm in Vienna, I'm traveling a lot, I love to shoot. Do you have this and that camera for me to try out? And that's how the relationship started. And he did the same kind of thing in India for a wildlife documentary that he did in his spare time. And yeah, Johnny, you talked to him about that.
Yeah, so just to complete the picture about Gunther, he's traveling a lot for his work to India. And he always tried to have some spare time and meet with his friends who are professional photographers. and then they go to different locations. They were literally going, because in all honesty, I've been in India once and I really loved it. But India is full of wildlife. I think many of us are simply don't recognize this, because for us, in many ways, wildlife is Africa or South America in some ways, but India is a gem here, and probably it's also not so many tourists are going there to shoot wildlife. Yeah, so this is actually, I think, the third or the fourth in a series that he did. This time he was looking for wolves. And what really ignited his interest, because wolves are also coming back kind of fashionable now here in Europe. But the thing is, the way that people and the authorities are treating wolves is more like shoot them, kill them, no more problem. Yeah. And in India, it's exactly the opposite. People are literally living next to the wolves, and they're happy that the wolves are coming to visit them. And there's some ecosystem between wolves and people. And that's what Gunther wanted to explore, to understand from the people if they're not really afraid from the wolves and why they like to live next to the wolf and vice versa. Obviously, we don't have any exclusive interviews with wolves, but we do have some beautiful images of the wolves, because you don't always see them, and Gunther managed to see them, and we have a lot of other animals along the way. But before Gunther even left, we were talking to him about equipment, because this is always really crucial. What type of equipment do you take for such a documentary? And it's not a mini documentary. It's like really 41 minutes. That's the outcome. So you can imagine how much footage he had. And that was exactly when the LUMIX G92 came out. And also, I think it was the 100 to 400 LUMIX lens. I think it was at the same time. So that was a good opportunity also for Gunther to explore the camera. And I have to say, Gunther is an avid user of Panasonic cameras. He has been using those since the GH1,
I think,
one or two.
I mean, that's the first time I met him. It was because of the GH1 or 2. Yeah. Yeah,
and he loved those ones, and he also he likes a lot Black Magic cameras. But his personal equipment, I think it's the S1 from LUMIX, from Panasonic. Anyway, so we had a long discussion at the office, and we somehow came to the conclusion that the LUMIX G9 Mark II will be appropriate to take to such a project. So we contact people at Fujifilm, at LUMIX, Panasonic Europe, and they were kind enough to immediately send us a camera. And I think the next day, Gunther left with the camera to India, and it took some time after he was back that he literally could sit on the footage. And
it's crazy. It's 41 minutes, and he's doing this in his spare time.
Yeah, but I have to say, and again, this is for complete transparency, some of the footage that he took with the LUMIX 100 to 400 lens was not as sharp as he expected. So he went a second time in a different season. And it's quite amazing to see, of course, different season, yeah. And this time he had an adapter with some of his EF lenses that obviously work really, really, really well with the LUMIX G9 II. So,
yeah, I mean, if for people who are not watching this but listening to this, of course, we put the link to the documentary in the show notes, but also in the video version of this podcast, you will see that it's just amazing footage that he captured here. I mean, it is literally, BBC quality in a way,
Yeah, so there's two things, and that's why I thought it would be a good idea to dive and actually talk to Gunther about this project next to the nice film that he made, but also to understand more about his workflow, how he did stuff, because we know how it is. Once you're in a remote locations like this, you have to rely on your camera. You have to rely on your sound equipment, and how do you do stuff basically in order to come to this type of quality? And we are talking, that's a single person eventually, and that's I think in our in this modern life, what used to be so complicated to do. And I'm not talking about the storytelling. I'm really talking about equipment,
the shooting,
and filming itself. It's amazing what a single person can do. So. Next to watching the film, which I just thought is very nice, there's a few scenes that really caught my imagination. One, you will see there's some diving kingfisher man, I think that's the name of the bird, literally diving into the water to catch some fish. And that was actually really interesting. Gunther told me when I talked to him about some Indian that finally recognized that the wildlife just next to their farm can also bring them money. So they're not dealing only with agriculture. So there's a single person there who literally made like a bio farm, and because it's kind of bio, the birds are coming. So many of those, and photographers and filmmakers can literally come and film the birds in a very nice way. Another person, and I'm back to these diving shots of the bird into the water. This is actually a pool. I think I have a photo in the article. It's a small pool with some kind of backdrop, and what the person created here is, of course, it has fish inside, and the birds are literally diving into this organized or pool. Yeah, that's really. Can you go up a second to see? I have to see. Where is this picture? But it's very nice how the person made this. Yeah, so it's nice to see that people are literally using their habitat next to the animals in order to create some stuff. So if you into understanding and knowing how to, because this is really an educational piece at the end of the day, the conversation with Gunther. And when it comes to equipment itself, he really liked what he saw with the G9 Mark II, which is in many ways very, very similar to the GH7. One thing that he would love to see is more like some buffer recording, because otherwise you spend so much time like running the camera in order to catch the bird in focus, diving into stuff.
You mean like a pre-roll?
Pre-roll,
and trigger.
Exactly. It would have been really great. And me personally, and I think you too, Nino, because we talk a lot about the like micro four thirds, like in all these large sensor world, what is the actual place of the micro four thirds in our filming environment. And I think this is still the best sensor size for wildlife photography and filming, because of the cropped sensor size, you can take a much smaller equipment with you. Yeah, smaller lenses, and with extenders, you can even get to crazy focal lengths. Yeah, and I personally wish, and that Panasonic will make a note out of this, including looking at what we did here, and really make a dedicated LUMIX line for bird watchers, for example. Yeah, those people. And now when I was in Japan, by the way, I was really looking. Let me start differently. Next to Ueno Park, this is one of the very famous parks in Tokyo. There are a lot of activities in the weekends, and there's like a huge pond, a lot of flowers, and there's a lot of wildlife in this pond. And you can see a lot of old people going to film and take photos of what's going on there. And it was interesting for me to see what cameras those people are actually using. I haven't seen a single LUMIX camera. I saw a lot of Canon full-frame cameras, a lot of iPhones. Those are the ones who are like the visitors, let's call it. Casual
shooters
that's
just
right.
walking by.
That's right. But you could see a lot of old people with Canon cameras, sometimes Sony, sometimes Fujifilm, with very big lenses, almost like a status thing. Yeah, I have a big lens. I'm a semi-professional or professional. Now, those people that have the time to go and watch birds are usually in their, 50, 60, and so on. And they are already established, meaning that's a hobby. Yeah. And they have the money to spend on equipment. The thing is that many of them, because they're simply not aware that a micro four thirds sensor will literally give them the freedom to travel a bit more lightweight and achieve really great results. So I really hope that Panasonic will emphasize this and aim into targeted group like that. Yeah,
I think you're right. I mean, I completely agree. I think this obsession with sensor size, we had it 15 years ago when the professional cameras after the DSLRs went to Super 35, and then we had it again with the full frame a few years ago on the more pro cameras, and it's almost like I see those cameras have gone everywhere. I mean, where used to be the niche when we started the website many years ago, it's now the mainstream, and now the niche is the small sensor, which is also wrong, right? Because it's like you said, I mean, just having the ability to use a smaller kit and especially a smaller lens and have a longer field of view is so beneficial for those things. Anything that is when you need to film stuff that's far away, and wildlife is the prime example for that. Sports also, by the way, where I mean, there's a reason why they still use traditional broadcast cameras with servo zooms on sports stuff, and now we have those big, massive cinema zooms for, like a Duvo for $200,000, which can be used on a full frame. But the question is, do you really need it? Because as long as you are still on a very long focal length, the depth of field is very shallow anyway, right? Even if the sensor is small, you get a very shallow depth of field. And it's actually sometimes detrimental because it can become so shallow that focusing is becoming impossible, especially if you don't have a proper autofocus. And even if you do have a proper autofocus, for those slow-mo shots, many cameras don't do autofocus in slow motion, or of course any mistakes in focusing are just simply more apparent because the high-speed recording actually makes any focus shift so visible. It's a lot of things. Yeah,
we are a little bit off topic here, but personally, and nobody's listening, nobody's watching, I'm completely turned off by the large sensor thing by now. And I, honestly,
talking about the Osmo again.
Yes,
we're going back to the Osmo.
Yeah, we have to go back to the Osmo because now I'm after filming in pro mode what I wanted. And I'm in the middle of editing, and there will be a dedicated, and we will talk about this. But just in general, what I want to say is I came equipped filming this review with a full kit. I had a tripod, I had everything, and literally I used nothing. Yeah, the Osmo kit, I don't have it like this. It's something in a box like this, in a package like this. I had everything that I needed. But we're talking about sensor size here, and the Osmo has 1 inch sensor size only. But I could see, and this is not a secret, when you're at a certain distance from a person, like a normal talking distance, it's still very easy to blur the background, also with a 1 inch sensor. So I can prove it. It's easy.
No, I know, but it's relatively wide angle, meaning you're kind of. That's like a 24mm lens.
But that's the thing with distorting. The Osmo, it's wide, but it's not that wide. They somehow worked the perfect focal length that doesn't distort if the person is in the middle, and it doesn't feel like let's say a GoPro or anything, and it still allows you in a normal distance to have a proper depth of field. I'm saying this because two things. One, every camera should go to or be dedicated to certain, depends what you do. Yeah, so you have to take the right tool to the job. For example, I was filming motorcycles, and here I could see easily the obstacle of working with the Osmo. I couldn't get all those beautiful shots in slow motion, like close-up shots, yeah, of the motorcyclist with the knee on the road, for example. But you need to do this in order to understand the limitations. Yeah, that's one thing. But back to the sensor size, because we are talking about the LUMIX G9 Mark II and Micro Four Thirds. Me personally, I'm really turned off by the whole let's do everything with large sensor and so on. So,
well, it's also, I think we also shouldn't forget that the quality of smaller sensor footage has become also a lot better over the last 10 years while we were not looking at it. You know what I mean? We were only, like we, meaning us and a lot in the audience, were only focusing on larger sensors, maybe Micro Four Thirds and up. In the meantime, a lot has happened on the smaller sensor side as well. So the technology for higher light sensitivity, but also lower noise, and noise is a big one, has advanced a lot. And that not only noise, but also, of course, noise reduction that is not affecting the sharpness of the image. And devices like the Osmo Pocket 3 and also of course, smartphones, I mean, we talked about it many times before, there are a lot of downsides. If we really dive in and we do a lab tests like we did for the iPhone 15 and also even some of the action cameras and drones, you will see that it's at some point falling apart because, of course, it cannot compete in every level with those things. But even if you mix the stuff, like if you mix the footage, it doesn't stick out anymore, right? It's like, because that used to be the case. You in the old days, I'm talking 10 years ago or less actually, when you're shooting with a camera like a DSLR that was doing line skipping, like a 5D Mark II or a D90 or whatever, or even the successors, and you cut that with a more expensive camera, you saw it because it's simply not as sharp, and it wasn't just a shallow depth of field. But now even the small sensor cameras look so good that you can just intercut them easily.
Yeah, and that brings me to the next topic, which is I'm just starting to write an article. It's an opinion article about there are almost no bad cameras those days. I think it's very important to recognize this because we are a little bit all obsessed with new equipment. And but if you look realistically at our market right now, there are no bad cameras, and the sensors are all doing more or less the same job in general. There is no really breakthrough when it comes to the image quality. And I intend to jump next week on an interview with a fellow filmmaker, Filippo from Italy. He also we discussed a little bit this matter, and he also came up with this kind of conclusion, like many of us, because when you think about how much we care and how much we want to do and how much we want to create I don't want to say the perfect picture, but we are all kind of very passionate about what we do. And some of us are really loyal to certain brands, camera brands. But when you look at the things objectively, a little bit from the outside, and you go like, let's talk about picture quality per se, regardless to the sensor size, then you come up in a very natural way and say that there is not so much of a difference, especially when you take the smaller sensors, like 1 inch, even from Sony or any other company. Those have now the flat picture profile and others that are letting you to match footage with more expensive cameras in a very easy way. And that brings me back to what we talked, I think, 2 episodes ago about innovation. So that's why we are looking for other ways to innovate or see more innovations in cameras, which is not necessarily the picture quality, because currently we are at a stage where this is really good.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's absolutely, and I think it's a symptom of this development is also that camera sales are not nearly anywhere where they used to be, because people are just happy with the cameras they have. And you don't need, there is no, even if you look at the different generations from the same manufacturer of a camera, there needs to be a lot of things better in order for somebody to be motivated to upgrade. I think in the last few years, the one thing for me personally that actually justifies an upgrade for a lot of the cameras was a better autofocus. And that's also where they made most of the money, because that meant you suddenly had to buy the original lenses, kind of, right? I mean, for example, just from my personal point of view, I mean, I shot with for productions many years with the FS7. I own 2 of them. Actually, they're filming us right now because I don't use them for anything else anymore. And there was no reason to upgrade. Big image quality was great for what I needed and for those productions, which is mostly TV documentaries. The only thing that motivated me to upgrade to an FX9, and a lot of people FX6, which is a less expensive camera, of course, was the autofocus, because that autofocus makes a huge difference. You suddenly can track faces and things that were a little bit annoying with an FS7 and other. So that was the only reason. And then you kind of like, I had to shift away from using Canon EF lenses with an adapter and actually start buying Sony or compatible E-mount lenses. And I think that's kind of, for a lot of manufacturers, also Canon, also Fujifilm, Panasonic, I mean, all those autofocuses got better. It took Panasonic the longest, arguably, but now they are there as well. And I think that's something that motivates people to upgrade and buy a new camera and the new lenses. But what's the next step, right? What are we still missing? And I agree with you. I think there's very little, right? We hardly anybody needs to deliver more than 4K. It's like even 4K is very easy to edit now on any computer that is less than, I would say, 5 years old. Even the computer upgrades, same thing, right? It's like the leaps are not as big as they used to be. So yes, absolutely. The innovation needs to come from elsewhere. They need to, in the old days, it was good enough to just make the image quality better. This is not enough anymore.
Yeah. Yes. Plus, take into account that a lot of the content that is being produced will end up in the internet.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that's an argument like, yes, but I will see a bigger difference in quality if I see bad quality and good quality next to each other on the internet versus on the TV, because TV viewing distance and also the average resolution of a broadcaster, I mean, many of the HD channels don't even broadcast full HD. It's still 720p. Like here in Austria, the public broadcast is 720p. It's crazy. And you go to their website and use their media thing, and then you will watch it maybe on a computer, and then you see like you can suddenly see the full HD, and same on YouTube, you can watch 4K and so on. So actually, it's completely flipped now. I think you see better quality on any web content now. You will see the difference better. So it's not like it used to be. I mean, cinema, yes, but you know, like who's shooting for cinema every day?
Just to conclude this topic, because you talked about upgrading a camera, one of the ongoing conversations that we have a lot with some of the camera manufacturers, whom are they aiming to when they are trying to convince people to buy a camera? And you will find out that so many times they are aiming to their own people, meaning whatever brand is introducing a new camera, they're really hoping that people that already have the camera from their own brand will upgrade.
Which is by itself kind of like a shrinking thing, right?
That's right. And our argument in all of those conversations is that you have to come up with new stuff in order to make people from other brands, using other brands, to consider your own brand. And then you're again widening the possibilities of your brand to grow up. But not so easy to conduct those conversations. And sometimes it feels like, yeah, it looks like always the manufacturers are really interested in their own, or the people that already purchased their own cameras and not their one out there. But hey, everybody, maybe they have their own reasons.
So just to point out, I mean, we publish an article which has a full documentary by Gunther, the wildlife documentary embedded. You can find that on our website. We'll put the link in the show notes. And separately, you conducted an interview with Gunther about that documentary.
Making of. Exactly. It's more like educational thing. Hopefully, you guys can... Yeah. I learned a lot from this conversation. I think anytime that I talk to any professional or anybody who actually burned his hands with filming, especially in conditions like this, you always learn something. And that was a very nice conversation with Gunther.
Yeah, so both links in the show notes. Please give them a watch. Really worth it. Let's take a quick break, and here's a message from our sponsors.
Welcome to 1 Minute Tips by Fujifilm and CineD. H.264 versus H.265. How different can they be if they only differ by one number? You'd be surprised. Both are video codecs, which are essentially algorithms to compress video data into smaller file sizes. 264 has been the compression standard for a while. It splits up the image area into fixed blocks and saves data by only changing those blocks when the image changes due to movement. 265, on the other hand, uses dynamic areas instead of fixed blocks and uses more advanced motion estimation, all which helps cut down file size. Plus, it's also able to retain more color information. Should you use it? Well, it's a huge jump from 264 in terms of efficiency, but requires more powerful hardware to run and is not yet universally adopted. So make sure you know your computer has enough resources and your final delivery platform can handle it. Check back with us for more compression talk. This has been 1 Minute Tips. Until next time.
FilmConvert is a software company based in New Zealand that creates color grading and correction plugins so you can enhance your artistry. With their two plugins, FilmConvert Nitrate and CinemaDNG, you can take the stress out of any color correction or grading task. Both plugins work their unique camera packs as the team profiles each specific camera and its sensor that's supported. This means that the controls within the plugin are tailored to the specific camera brand, model and profile that your footage was shot with. While we all love shooting on film, the process and cost of actually shooting film can get quite exorbitant. However, you can get the dreamy and romantic look of celluloid film with FilmConvert Nitrate. Nitrate offers a range of different film stock emulations and grain sizes to choose from, each with customizable controls that you can really dial in your desired look. Choose from one of Nitrate's motion picture, black and white or still stock emulations and a range of different grain scans to get the authentic look and feel of film. You can get 10% off FilmConvert Nitrate when you use the code CineD at checkout. And now back to the show. And while we're at the topic of sensor size, let's actually pull another topic a little bit forward, which is small sensor cameras were also announced last week or 2 weeks ago, I think. It's Sony introduced 2 new camcorders, and definitely something we're neglecting. I mean, I think it's fair to share with the audience that even to motivate our writers to write about that is not that easy, because it's like, you know, everybody is filming on larger sensor cameras. Everybody who's writing for CineD is a professional filmmaker, as you might know. And it's like, you know, like usually, you know, we try to find the people who fit best to write about something like that. And for something like this, just people aren't as excited about small sensors. And Omri wrote a nice opinion piece on the fact that pro camcorders are not dead. And also, you know, at the same time, kind of like talking about those new Sony camcorders and arguing why. And he interestingly points out that, like what I said before, where used to be the large sensor cameras used to be the niche, and now it's completely flipped. Now the small sensor cameras are the niche, meaning the camera manufacturers don't replace those models very often anymore. What used to be almost an annual or biannual thing to replace those camcorders with built-in lens and small sensors is now a very rare thing. And now but the thing is, I mean, those things used to be extremely expensive, right? I mean, if you had a fully fledged camcorder with a proper zoom range, 1-inch sensor or less, like one of the, you know, I bought a DVX100A, I bought a EX3 from Sony, and those were the professional cameras at the time. But now, of course, a lot of productions, especially in TV, have completely moved on to the larger sensors. However, there's still a big market, and that's the argument here, for those smaller sensor cameras. And I think you pointed out, like in Japan, they're particularly popular still for a lot of things, but also wedding filmmaking, and also I think corporate stuff for internal divisions of companies or even smaller companies. They make a lot of sense. Like if you need to be flexible, if you're covering, you know, stuff like news conferences, events, and you do this for the company you're working for, and you're not as a very often not a hired filmmaker to make something look cinematic, but get as many shots in a short amount of time as possible. Those things cannot be beaten. I mean, if you have a zoom range of 20, 30 times built into your camera, I can literally stand on one spot at an event and get you 100 different shots that you can edit. Try that with an interchangeable lens camera, even with a zoom range of 24-70. I mean, it's very limiting in a way, right? Yeah,
that's why we always need the right tool for the job. But in this particular case, I think we decided a long time ago that for us, large sensor is from 1 inch up, and that's why we already in the past covered one inch sensor size cameras. And here, actually, my take, let me say differently. Sony used to be a leading manufacturer for broadcast cameras, and I'm saying used to be because if you remember, that's how we all started, from Betacam to DigiBeta and so on. That's what we used to. It was a smaller sensor, but it was a proper professional cameras. Those used to cost arm and leg. Yeah, the manufacturer, the broadcaster had to spend a lot of money. I think it was between around $50,000 for a camera, and that was without the lens. The lens usually would have come from Fujifilm or Fujinon or Canon, and that was a complete kit. And easily you could pay between $80,000 to $100,000 for one camera. But of course, time has changed. Yeah, and the DSLR revolution also kind of ate a lot of this market. But it brings me to the point that it's nice to see that Sony is still innovating with handycams or cameras like those, because also the broadcasters, especially those who are broadcasting 24 hours a day and needs a lot of footage and material to feed the beast. Yeah, I don't think they can really afford a lot of those very expensive cameras. So they still have a niche, of course, but Sony needed to find or to compensate on how do they make the money if they can't sell those very expensive cameras anymore, or they sell them in a much smaller quantities like before. So those two cameras are the evolution of other camcorders that Sony already had before. And here what they're trying to emphasize is two main things. One is the zoom range, as you said, and this is 24 to 400 millimeter. And the other thing is it has a dedicated AI chip for autofocus, which of course is extremely important. And as much as some don't like autofocus, I love autofocus.
If it works well.
Exactly. As a one-man band, if you can rely on your autofocus, then it's a big plus. And those cameras are really made for the independent either newsman, like news cameraman, or wedding filmmaker, and so on.
For me, the big thing here is to have the Sony's electronic variable ND, which is absolutely revolutionary. If you have worked with this, it's also in a lot of the FX camera, FX6, FX9, and so on. And it's simply amazing because it means that you can have you can set your aperture outside at the point where you want it and just keep it there, no matter what the light is doing. And it's just very, very handy to not ever, having to adjust that actually, because you can set it on automatic. Like automatic ND is a huge thing. And there's only Sony that can do this, because I guess they patented this. So far, no other manufacturer has something like this built into their cameras, and now we also have it in these small sensor cameras. And also just consider the zoom range that you get with both of those cameras. A 20x zoom, it's equivalent of 24 to 480 millimeters. Just imagine having a 480 millimeter on a full frame. Goes back to what we talked about with the wildlife documentary. This would be a massive, massive lens. And with this, it's just simply built into a small camcorder body. Now, of course,
1-inch sensor, you can reduce everything.
It looks different. Of course, 1 inch is also much smaller than Micro Four Thirds. But still, I mean, for this would not, going back to that argument we had about the image quality, I'm sure shots from these cameras would not stick out like a sore thumb if the rest of your film is shot on a large sensor camera. I mean, I would not use this as a B camera for an interview, because you would see that. Like, you would see if the main camera is a large sensor and the B camera with this, simply because of the depth of field. But if you have like B-roll, close-ups, zoomed in kind of stuff, definitely. I mean, this can definitely work. And I mean, more often than not, actually, I've been on shoots where I shot everything on large sensor cameras, and then somebody else was doing behind the scenes actually for some company, whoever the film is for. And then in the edit, it turns out some shots, it would be nice to have a shot of filming the interviewee getting prepared and mic'd up, because there's maybe a voiceover introducing the person, and that's only shot on the B-roll camera. And this works now. I mean, it's not falling apart. It just fits together. And so there's still room in the market for those type of cameras. They're certainly not for all of us. We're certainly not the people to buy those cameras. But if you are looking, don't always consider that everything has to be shot on full frame.
We are not the one to buy those cameras, it's not a matter of arrogancy, just for the type of work that we do. This is not what we need. But of course, if you do a lot of news, if you're running a lot,
streaming,
or if you doing weddings, you have everything that you need in one piece of equipment, from XLR to ND to the lens, of course, built in, LCD, viewfinder, all the manual settings.
I would recommend this to anybody who really shoots any kind of stuff where he or she is forced to acquire as many different shots as possible in the shortest amount of time. Because this is what these cameras are perfect at, in my opinion.
You know, when I was starting my career as an assistant cameraman many years ago, in the TV station that I used to work for, there was this old guy, a cameraman. Everybody liked him. But there was a joke in the station. He used to put the tripod in one place, literally one place, have the Betacam SP on the tripod, and then from that spot, he would literally film 360 degrees around him, whatever he needed. We used to really finish very, very fast that shooting day, but thanks to the zoom lens, of course, and this kind of philosophy, I'm here, that's my position, I just do 360.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not the prettiest stuff, but he got the job done.
Exactly, and very fast.
Good. Let's move on to the poll of the week. We released a poll. Johnny's idea was to do a poll on in-camera memory. Would you want this feature, like build fixed memory into a camera, meaning in addition or instead of?
No.
In addition to interchangeable cards.
Yeah, and first of all, again, the background. I'm in Japan having a lot of conversations with different camera manufacturers, and part of it is, as we said, about innovation. And based on a talk that we had, one of the things is, should we actually have internal memory? Forget now the capacity, but good memory in the camera, that if you went out fast, you suddenly stuck. Let's say you literally forgot your memory card. If you don't have one, you can't do anything. It becomes like what do you call it, doorstep? You can't do anything, doorstop with the camera. Or let's say that you shot on your exclusive fast cards and then you don't have a way to back up the material, or you don't have the time, and you can't, we know the feeling, you can't film more and you can't delete stuff because you never watched it. What then? So our argument was, or at least in the conversation that we had with some of the camera manufacturers, please try to include memory in the camera, let's say 1 terabyte, and that will be like the ultimate backup for people when they're out and about. The chance to be stuck with no card or run out of space will be much slimmer. And that's what we try to do in this poll, just to see if people would like to have this feature, because part of the conversation with the Japanese a specific manufacturer was, you know what, let's do this poll, see what people think about it. And of course, it takes 2 to 3 years to come up with a camera, but maybe for the next generation, this is a feature that you can think of adding and doing. When I look at the conversation that we have, or some of the comments, and actually also in Instagram, because that was kind of a very popular post in Instagram, maybe I was not clear enough. It seems like people are thinking that what we suggested is to have an internal memory instead of, and that's not the case. We just want this next to, and I just explained why. So I try to, in this short article, also talk about the advantages, and of course there are some disadvantages, and the main one that I can see is if something happens, and you lose material, that's another thing for a company, a camera manufacturer to worry about. I think the last thing they need is people complaining about, hey, I lost my footage because your internal memory was not good enough. That's one thing. And of course, because we are planning, like the manufacturer has to plan 2 years ahead, it's all about cost. And the question is, if they can get something which is, not to get to the point that they buy expensive and then sell cheap, because of course that will, the camera price will have to go up a little bit if there is memory in it, and the question if people are willing to pay for it, the extra.
Well, two things here. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but on a lot of the entry-level DJI drones, this feature exists.
Yeah.
So
the same with Ricoh and some Leica.
And it's happened to me many times, not many times, but a few times on shoots where, you know, like you're under time pressure, you need this extra shot for documentary or whatever with a drone, and you fly up, and then you realize when after you've taken off that you forgot to put the memory card in. And then that's when this feature comes in handy with a drone. It's usually small. It's like 8 gigabytes or something like that. You have, I think, on the Mavic Mini, or it's called Mini, just Mini now, Mini 3, whatever, and also the higher end models. Not all of them, but it's very useful. And then separately from that, but same thing, of course. I mean, you will sometimes only in the air, you realize that there's something on it. Like you need to, and then you go into the media and you need to delete the old stuff or whatever. But it works. I mean, there's something. And on the high end, the Mavic 3 Pro Cine, the Cine version comes with a built-in SSD, and you need that in order to shoot the full quality ProRes because
it's the fastest, I guess.
Exactly. The downside here being, and that's kind of would be the same with cameras, that the drone is blocked like for offloading after the flight, or either that, because 1 terabyte is a lot of space, even if you shoot like a ProRes, unless it's the very high end. But if you shoot a normal ProRes 422 or HQ, you still can record hours, meaning if you don't have the time to offload, even though the offload is very fast because it's an SSD, so as long as you also use an SSD to offload and your producer didn't hand you a crappy HD, which is slow, then you can offload quickly. But if you don't have the time, and meaning you usually with drone flights, you try to block the drone flights on the location. So you take off once and then you go to the other spot and you take off again. And in between, what on a professional shoot, what I do is swap the cards, because if the drone crashes, it's lost. If you use that feature, or if you have to use that feature because you need to record the ProRes, sometimes there's simply not the time. So you take off again, having all that footage from the prior flight still on the drone, with the danger of crashing the drone. There's always a danger of crashing a drone, and everything would be lost, right? So that's the downside, and that would be
a different scenario, you know. What you're saying, of course, I think it's actually a design flaw. When this is the only way to record the highest quality with the internal SSD, saying exactly what you said now, this is a design flaw.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
but if it's just a backup, but you went up and where's the micro SD? I forgot to. Yeah.
But think about, for example, Sony Alpha cameras. You can either use CF Express Type A or SD cards. SD cards are a lot cheaper. You have to use the Type A cards if you want to shoot the high-speed stuff. Yeah. What if there is, it doesn't need to be 1 terabyte, but let's say there is 256 gigabyte built into a camera, high speed, meaning because all of us usually don't shoot high speed all day. We need this for a couple of shots. So just having this feature built into a camera with a high speed memory, you would just use it for those type of shots, which would enable you to use the less expensive cards and even use maybe the proxy, like the dual slot recording as a backup, because, you know, SD cards are cheap. You use 2 of them, do this, and then you only switch to the internal memory once you shoot. That would be useful just to save cost for very expensive media.
What is the motivation of Sony to do so?
Nothing.
Wait. That's not the whole story. If they lose you as a potential customer to buy their Type A cameras, not so much. But we know that more and more Type A cards are coming to the market. When those are coming to the market, that might be a motivation for Sony to do exactly what you said and include some memory, because then they can charge on their cameras $50 more.
By the time people are listening to this podcast, they will already know. But Type A is finally becoming more affordable. Angelbird just released new Type A cards to the market, right?
by the time that you hear the podcast.
Exactly.
Don't shock me. I thought for a second that
we're not live. We're not live.
We are breaking an embargo.
No. So I think there's a. I mean, a lot of people in the poll. I think about 50%, only 300 so far actually participated in the poll, but still about 50% of the people said, "Who needs such a thing? External memory cards are enough for me." But I think if people had it, they wouldn't want to miss it anymore as a backup. Yeah. But as you said, maybe they didn't understand it correctly. It should not be instead of the external memory or removable memory. It should just be as a backup. And even if it's a small one, of course it's useful. Yeah. And I think about, a little bit less, 37%. Think is a good idea. So,
but make the plus between all
that's
those,
said,
and then I think it's really 50-50 also with
it is,
the
actually,
advantage.
if you, people who are not willing to pay, it's about 50-50 actually.
That's right. Which means there is a room, I think, for the specific manufacturer and others to consider such a feature.
It's a good example for us, what we talked about before. It would be a real innovation from, one of the specifically Japanese camera manufacturer that we haven't seen before, and it would be something that could be a benefit compared to the competition and a real innovation. DJI has done it for the drones. Why not do it for the other cameras? Good. Let's stick with the topic of memory for a second and move on to something else. SanDisk introduced an 8 terabyte SD card, like a normal SD card with 8 terabytes and a micro SD card with 4 terabytes. You wrote an article about, actually we should put opinion on this. If such
tough news, huh?
if such high capacity cards are even needed. Now, what's your take on this?
Few things. First of all, this is innovation, and we can't stop technology to be more and more advanced, and it's quite amazing when you think about 4 terabyte on a micro SD card or 8 terabyte on a SD card. Two things have to be said here. One is that those cards, in terms of speed, they are kind of V30, so they are not the fastest, of course, but still it can be good for some 4K usage. It really depends on the codec that you use, depends on my brain. So
I also found this V rating completely strange sometimes, because I've used V90 cards that don't work on cameras that say that you have to use V90 for a specific codec, and I have used V60 or V30 cards and actually been able to record higher codecs than it was supposed to be. So I don't know.
So it's also about, of course, the data rate, but that's why manufacturers are running very precise tests with different cards and their cameras, and that's why they can recommend only certain cards. I think sometimes there's also a marketing thing here. In all honesty, of course, I understand the value of data rate and to be able to sustain the higher data rate for a very long time if you want to record, half an hour of footage at 4K, whatever. But sometimes I do think that obviously manufacturers can charge a little bit more money for the higher V rating. But here, the second thing is, do we really want to record so much footage on a single card?
No.
I heard somebody says no.
No, please don't.
There's always the possibility of losing the material. I personally will never shoot an 8 terabyte card throughout the card, meaning fill it up with footage. I usually use up to 1, maximum 2 terabyte when we're using ProRes in a high capacity or some RAW shooting. Then I have a feeling that I have a better control on the footage without risking have the risk to lose it if something happens. And it happened before. Shooting with some cards, like all of us, if you don't shoot, it never happens. But if you shoot, you know that it can happen.
And also price-wise, I mean, I don't know the specific pricing of these cards.
They did not disclose this. That's why.
But in general, if you look at prices of memory cards, usually you buy a 1 terabyte card, it's usually almost twice the price of two 512 gigabyte, for example, right? It's not much less. So there's also not really an economical reason to go with the bigger one. And also, simply like you said, first of all, it's safety. You know, like, I mean, just do the math. Do the math. How much footage you are shooting, and how much, you know, like how many hours can you shoot in the maximum quality on a specific card? And my rule of thumb was always, I want cards to sustain at least 1 hour. Like there should be space for 1 hour of footage, right? Whatever, if they shoot the best quality, maybe not high speed, but just a normal speed, high quality should be 1 hour. That's my rule of thumb, because I feel that is a perfect size that I can hand off the card or even back it up myself while I swap cards. Do the backup in, you know, somebody does the backup, or, you know, I run the backup if I'm alone. A computer can do this, copy to 2 or 3 SSDs or HDs while I continue to shoot on the other card, because I have 2 512 gigabyte cards, and the same with 128 cards or 256 cards. I mean, I'd rather even buy 2 128 gigabyte cards than one 250, but it depends on the codec, it depends on the size, of course.
What I can see myself doing here, in this specific case with the 8 terabyte, if those SD cards are not that expensive, and I don't really care about the speed, I would use them for kind of last resort backup. Meaning I finished a shooting day, and from whatever reason I ran out of space for SSD or any doesn't matter. If those are very small to take with me, and if the price is right, I would literally back up the material to 2 of those, and knowing that hopefully I'm covered.
Although I have to say, usually the speed of the card matters more for me when it's connected to the computer than in the camera, because that's when it takes a long time.
Sure, but then you go to sleep. I mean,
really slow.
You finish, you go to sleep
stuff,
or eat dinner, and then
yeah. As long as it doesn't extend your shooting day into the night, because you still have to move stuff over.
But it would be interesting, guys, to know what you think about this crazy amount of capacity. 4 terabyte in a micro SD and 8 terabyte on an SD card. Do you think this is something that you'll be using or losing?
Yeah. Let's move on to the next topic. Well, we already talked about IBC, so we are about to head out to IBC in about 2 weeks' time, a little bit more. And as usual, we cover IBC with a big team, going to shoot a lot of videos about new products, meet with a lot of manufacturers to talk about those products, and you will find them all on our YouTube channel and also our social media. And for many years, we've given out the CineD Best of Show Award, which we have kind of redesigned this year for NAB. And that new design, of course, will also be out there for IBC. Now, since NAB, we've changed the structure a little bit, where in the past, we always kind of struggled to find the winners in the different categories while we were at the show, which was difficult for us because our schedules are so packed with all those video shoots and meetings, that we decided that we are asking manufacturers to submit their products now before the show. So actually, up until the show can still run. I think we end submissions on the first or second day of the show, but people from manufacturers can submit their products in different categories before the show, and then they will be considered for our Best of Show awards. We have 10 categories for IBC. We had 7 for NAB. We worked a little bit on the categories because we're looking at all the submissions that we got. We realized that it might make sense to split some of those categories up. So we actually increased to 10 categories. The categories are cameras, lenses, audio equipment, lighting equipment, camera support, camera control and accessories, battery innovation, AI innovation, broadcast innovation, which is new, streaming, remote production, and cloud workflows, which is one. So yeah, those 10 categories manufacturers can submit their products in. We've never broken any embargo, so we're happy to sign embargoes about new products. If anything is only being released at IBC, there is an entry form for manufacturers to enter their product on the website, and we'll put the link in the show notes. Yeah, and here's a photo of a very happy Grant Petty receiving 2 of the awards at NAB, actually, for Best of Show. I think it was DaVinci and what was it? One of the cameras, I think. camera for the
17K, was it?
the
so.
12K. The 12K. Yeah. Good. Moving on. Next subject. Samyang introduced something very interesting, actually only to the South Korean market. They call it Remaster Slim, and it's a new series of lenses, or should I say lens? It's the world's first optical exchange autofocus lens. And what it is, it's basically a ring. It looks like a pancake lens, like in terms of size. And you can remove the middle part. You can remove the optical part. So very interesting idea. Talking about innovation here. So one of the things we mentioned before is that usually, of course, the one thing that is very hard to shrink in cameras is the lens, right? Because of optical limitations. And I guess that's what they are trying here, to make it possible for people to have an extremely small kit with them and still have different focal lengths. Now, you can remove the middle part, and it's called the Remaster Slim base, which is this ring, and it has a hole in the middle, and that ring thing is what you actually plug into your lens mount. It has all the electronical connections. It has the connection for autofocus and all those things, but it's missing the optical part. And the lens modules that come with it, or that you can use with it, are, let me actually look what focal lengths they are. They're all quite wide as far as I remember. I think it's 21 millimeter f3.5, 28 millimeter f3.5, and 32 millimeter 2.8. So all relatively wide, all relatively close to each other. Although I think a perfect idea for something like street photography, like to stay really small with your camera. This comes for E-mount, I think. Let me check, actually. I'm not sure anymore. Which mount is this?
I think E-mount, because usually what they always do, or many of the manufacturers love to start with E-mount because Sony cameras are very popular.
Hopefully it's also going to be available for the L-mount, because as we point out in the article, it would be perfect for something like a LUMIX S9, just to have a very small, also for the Fuji. I mean, if you had this for X-mount, some of the newer Fuji cameras that are so small.
For me, it's interesting to see this because I don't know if some of you knows already, but we are also thinking or doing our own CineD products. They're in the making. We have our original products. Yeah, there will be 2 or 3 hopefully soon that we can share this exciting news in a proper official way. But one of the ideas that we haven't touched fully yet was regarding lenses. Obviously, you always need a lens to go with the camera. And I can see already how this can go to so many ways, which, some of it is also related to what we want to do. But it's very nice to see how in such a crowded market, Samyang is innovating here. That's a brilliant idea. If they will play their cards right, and I'm not so sure about it, because we also know, I mean, you reviewed their other, what was that? The lens.
VFA lenses, yeah.
Yeah, and we know how slow they are with coming up with different models for...
Well, now they have it. I mean, now they have even I think it's a variable ND edition. Stuff.
Maybe, but that was really one of a genius idea, but coming up with so many other models for that specific...
You're talking about I think it's called VFA series of lenses, which is E-mount primes, very lightweight, all the same size, but they had a kind of mount in the front.
In the front, not
electronic connector, where we didn't actually know what it's for in the beginning, and I think now they released something like variable ND editions.
Yeah, I think they also have some anamorphic stuff maybe for that. But I'm just saying, it just takes them ages to come up with some additional things. But the idea is really great. Also the front connectors, and now when we see the front lens, or the middle part, the lens or the optical part can be changed. That's very smart.
And I think it's good. I mean, they certainly realized the popularity of cameras such as the X106 from Fujifilm and many others in this category. Manufacturers realize that people want small cameras, And to cater this market, of course, you need a small lens. So adding lenses to, motivating people again. We talked about this last week with Victor Ha from Fujifilm. People want dedicated devices again. There's a new generation that is actually fatigued from all the notifications and everything that a smartphone does. They want a dedicated device again that helps him to focus. And which is one of the reasons why that camera, the X106 in particular, and also its predecessor, are so popular. And anything that helps people to stay small in the package but still be flexible, because of course that means if you put a zoom lens on that camera, it's not small anymore. So why not have this and at least have 3 different focal lengths, even if they're close to each other, but have some flexibility while still not carrying a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Good idea, Samyang. Hopefully we'll be able to fulfill the full potential of such innovation.
Yeah. Then we also talked about the Swiss Rig SR RAW cinema camera for iPhone. Now that's an app for iPhone that I think it's been out for a while. And it's a way to get CinemaDNG RAW from your iPhone.
It's new, the app itself is new.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, this app is new. He had other stuff.
Okay.
If you remember, the creator behind that had a different app, but this specific one is new.
So right now, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only for vertical shooting. At least that's what somebody commented, and I also see it in the photos. But it is generating HD CinemaDNG 14-bit files. It's only HD because they do pixel for pixel, so it's a crop, I think, as far as I understand. It's not using the full sensor width. It's kind of, we still have to dive into this here, like you're completely new to this.
With so much news around, we have direct contact to the person behind. Actually, they became neighbors of ours.
They moved to Vienna.
Here in Vienna. It's an interesting thing, but it's also in development, meaning the goal is to introduce something that can shoot even in a higher resolution.
Somebody made a good comment that it reminds them of Magic Lantern for the 5D Mark II and III, but more stable. It's not crashing, it's stable, but it's really the idea is to get the maximum quality out of the camera, the sensors, and also apparently the look is we have to test it still, but it seems to be quite cinematic, there's no post sharpening and all those things. So very curious to try that out.
The only 2 main things here, and that's you can see also with the comments. First of all, people are somehow hoping or expecting Blackmagic Design to come up with enhancements for the free app, the camera app.
Blackmagic RAW, yeah.
That's right.
Blackmagic Camera. Yeah.
That's right. And that's why they're a bit hesitant to invest on such a thing. And I'm not talking about the resolution, because obviously eventually that will probably be higher resolution. And the other thing is, this is a monthly subscription.
But it's not, to be fair, it's not very expensive. It's $4.99 a month, but it's $19.99 a year. So,
yeah. And that's the thing. I don't want to dive into the whole thing, but please consider that this is a small company, and small company needs the funds in order to develop and do some stuff. So if you like the idea, because so many of us are actually, giving Amazon and Netflix and Disney Plus and so many other big companies, we are using Adobe. Yeah, we're using monthly subscriptions.
And now you can't even share those subscriptions anymore.
Yeah, I'm just saying that. So just consider it's a small company. They need our support in order to develop even more. And if the price is right for you and you see some value in the functionality, just maybe it will be wise to support them.
Good. Let's move on actually to more software. Now Blackmagic Design released the final version of DaVinci 19. After months of beta, somehow they do a great job at always telling us what's new in the beta. We never report about, Adobe betas, but somehow the Blackmagic stuff is always on the top of our mind, simply because people are very excited about DaVinci. It's free in its basic version, and it's a very versatile, extremely versatile, powerful piece of software.
I think that the marketing also runs a bit different. I don't recall getting from Adobe maybe once or twice a year. We are, of course, getting
you get the betas, but I mean, there's a big announcement around the trade shows usually, and that's when we cover this. But of course, I mean, it's small. You get the updates for DaVinci sometimes in small steps, and they do add new features even with every beta, which is not common actually. Yeah,
but it's also very clever marketing-wise, because obviously we and others are reporting about it, and it's in the news again, and it brings to the attention of people that hey, Blackmagic design DaVinci is growing and getting better, and now finally it's here. So Nino,
a lot of the DaVinci 19 update has to do with DaVinci Resolve Replay, which is basically live media sync from their Blackmagic cloud. So now you can cut footage already while the Blackmagic cameras are still rolling, which is kind of great. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of applications for this kind of stuff. These whole cloud workflows. I mean, so basically Blackmagic built their own cloud workflow, whereas Adobe bought Frame.io and their camera to cloud, Blackmagic made it by themselves. Now, of course, this is still limited to Blackmagic cameras. That's the downside here. But also it works with the Blackmagic camera app for iPhone and now also Android. So it's really, I mean, if you need a lot of different angles from an event and need to live cut that, there's really a lot of options out there to cut this now on a budget, to be honest. I mean, if you can, I don't know if this feature is part of the free version of DaVinci, but if you think about it, you could use DaVinci and then have 5 people running with their phones to film something and use the free app, and everything is free, and somebody can offsite edit something for free. That's kind of amazing where we've come. And also, I mean, so far Blackmagic Design has never charged for an upgrade. So even if you purchased DaVinci years ago, once for $300, you can still just update to the latest version of the studio, and then you have all the functionality. So that's really cool. And there's a lot of course, AI related stuff like neural engine stuff that has been enhanced with DaVinci Resolve. Also, of course, in Fusion and Fairlight, the post-production areas and the coloring tools. So I mean, some people are
quite happy to use AI, huh?
Well, in this, yes, yeah. But you see that some people are a little bit fearing that this piece of software becomes too massive, which is fair because, of course, every new feature adds a likelihood of it becoming unstable. And of course, there have been complaints like with any beta version of anything, and also sometimes final versions, some things are getting incompatible or it's crashing. And of course, the likelihood of that happening is higher if there's more features in it. So the question is, will it make sense for Blackmagic at some point to break out the different functions into separate applications? Maybe, like basically Blackmagic is doing everything in one app that Adobe is doing over 5 apps. So this is something worth considering, I guess, in the future, because also, and that's also marketing wise, a lot of people still think about only coloring when they hear DaVinci Resolve, whereas it has this full edit and cut pages, and it has Fusion, and it's kind of like this one-trick pony that does everything. And they even Fairlight with the audio mixer, like a professional audio suite. It's everything in there, but somehow, that's a bit hard to get across to people.
I think until they will not feel the flames, meaning if they will start to get reports from people that this is unstable and it's not working as expected, because at the end this is really a professional tool, then I guess they will consider to divide the app. Otherwise, I think it's one of the strengths, and that's one of the main marketing thing is that you have one software that you can do a lot with.
Yeah, I mean, I put the full list of features into this article, and it's endless. I mean, the new stuff that's in there is just massive. Don't forget that we have several very, very extensive courses on DaVinci Resolve on MZ, and it's called the Beginner's Guide to DaVinci Resolve. Right now, this deals still with 18.5. We will do an extra lesson that is talking about the new stuff, but this is really going through everything. Like if you want to learn DaVinci from the ground up, Ollie Kenchington is your guy. He's a certified Blackmagic instructor, certified trainer, and he's going through everything. And this is available on MZ right now and will also be updated to DaVinci 19. We also have a couple other courses from him, which are specifically about coloring. So, like just head over to MZ if you really want to learn DaVinci. Yeah. Good. And there was another update. Funny enough, I think this was released, this video from Apple about Final Cut Pro 10.8 was released one day after Blackmagic announced the full release of DaVinci 19. Might be sheer coincidence, but it surely looks interesting. Apple, while I was at this iPad event in May, they showed Final Cut Pro for iPad 2, which I reviewed, especially this live multicam feature, and they didn't even mention to us that there's going to be a new Final Cut Pro version, like major update 10.8. But it's out now, and it also has, some major updates. Not as many as DaVinci. Still also free update for anybody that purchased Final Cut Pro. Same price as DaVinci Studio, $300. So far, I think in the last 12 years since Final Cut Pro X, now it used to be called X, now it's only Final Cut Pro 10. They've never charged for any upgrade. So same here. Few new things that are exciting. I think the most exciting one for me is the smooth slow-mo features. And now there's a new algorithm for creating slow motion effects, which is really designed to produce higher quality results than previously. So it's interpolating frames, to get a proper slow motion that looks more like an actual high-speed shot. And of course, I tried it and it works really well, especially if you use shots that were already shot in slow motion. So the more it has to work with, the better it works. But you can really slow it down another 50% easily, and you wouldn't notice the difference.
You remember, I think it was Twixtor. Remember there was this software, quite amazing, but very expensive to do this type.
At the time, it was very slow. And actually, Final Cut has always been very good at this, much better than Premiere. I always hated when somebody used this on Premiere in the old, it still doesn't look as good. So I'm very happy to see that they enhanced this even more, because I think it did frame blending before, so very simple. And now it's really interpolating those frames, so very useful. Anything
that you need, like on day-to-day basis, if it's slow motion, if it's audio cleaning, or if it's stabilizing, I think Premiere is doing less good than DaVinci or Final Cut. That's and we see this every time. But here it's really great that they can do slow motion from
voice isolation. Good example. We just had we're working on a new MZ course from Oli, and there was a mix up there was a problem with the audio recording. And the funny thing is, the side story, right? We have Oli Kensington, who is the DaVinci expert, but not secretly, he talks about this. He likes to edit in Final Cut as well. And he tried to clean up the audio from his workshop in Final Cut using the voice isolation feature, which is now also promoted on the latest version to be better. Uses AI to enhance speech. Yeah, didn't have such. I mean, it was okay, but it still had a little bit of a hiss. And I told him, please open DaVinci, use voice isolation there, and he did, and it sounded a million times better. So
DaVinci or Final Cut? What did
DaVinci? Okay. He used Final Cut first for this.
Okay.
And I found it funny because he's the DaVinci guy, and I told him to use DaVinci to clean it up, and it sounds much better. So now it's like you can't hear that there was any problem. So just from our personal experience, the DaVinci voice isolation seems to work better, even in the latest version. Good. Some final things before we wrap this episode. Godox released the Cube S wireless mic system, tiny microphones, and they support Apple's Find My function, which is like you lose them, you can track them.
Yeah, the thing is, they're so small. I mean, the microphones are 7 grams. It's tiny and amazing. I mean, this device is mostly for mobile phones. It will come in 2 versions, USB-C and what's the name? The older one, the Lightning. Yeah, and it's literally the charger is a lipstick size thing, very, very small. And yeah, I think also here there is a lot of, we've seen something similar from Holy Land in the past. And usually with Chinese companies, if one is introducing something, I think the others are interested in exploring the possibility of doing something not always similar. Sometimes also always a bit sometimes
you're
better.
Such a diplomat.
I have to. I'm running a site. Yeah, but in this regards, it's nice to see. First of all, that they have what they achieved.
Yeah.
Because I think we are neglecting the technical part here. It's to fit everything into such a small package is amazing. Second thing is that they're coming up with different packages. So it depends if you need one microphone or two microphones, and if you need Lightning or USB-C. And the last thing is, of course, the prices. I mean, it started what, $57, I think, all the way to $119. This one
doesn't. You can't plug in a mic, right? This is just a live mic.
I haven't seen a way here to plug in a mic, which is always a bit of an obstacle in this size. But it does have some noise reduction. I'm very curious to see how that works, because I'm not a big believer of noise reductions in those microphones, because because noise,
I also find it distracting in the DJI mic too.
Noise is always different, like different environments, and here it's supposed to kind of tackle one noise stamp. Yeah, I wish there was a way to let the device listen first to the noise, and then according to that calculate the noise reduction. But anyway, I don't know how much we can expect from a $57
I mean, it's really
equipment,
small.
but it's very small, and it will come with different happy stickers, because one of the things with all the Chinese manufacturers, they really love to put their logo on.
Well, not just Chinese, also Rode. Rode actually started this.
You're right.
They started this.
You're right. Yeah. So it's funny, because now working with the DJI Mic 2, I saw how sometimes it can be problematic. I forgot to bring black gaffer. Maybe a camera should have also an internal black gaffer next to the memory. But I forgot black gaffer. I couldn't gaffer the name DJI on the microphone.
I think there was, they could almost sell one for $10 more if the logo is not on it. Like,
that's almost like a professional feature not to have the logo so big.
I agree. It's very distracting. I also saw but it's working. Like in terms of promotion for them, I think the Rode has been so successful, and it's like if you look at. And I'm not talking about us as professional filmmakers, more like as creators and so on, that really spontaneously clip those things on and don't even think about it.
But what is next?
You see this in so many videos on YouTube and Instagram. Just yesterday, even on big channels, the Holy Land, the Rode, like people just put it on and it works. And I mean, from a marketing standpoint,
of course, but what is next? A lens with the logo of the company in front of the lens?
I know. It's not that I find it great. I'm just saying from a marketing standpoint, I understand why they're doing it. But it's annoying. But at least they have stickers, so you can make them even more annoying by putting a smiley on it.
No, it's okay. Again, it's nice. Price is right. Those are not available yet. Hopefully, we can maybe try them and see if this is good, because we know mobile phones are also getting very popular. And for run and gun situations, sometimes that's exactly what you need if you are occasional vlogger, blogger, or just doing some stuff, and you need good audio, because that's the whole thing. The essence here is to have good audio.
Let's move on to one of the final topics and one of the most favorite ones of our audience, AI for video. Just joking. We get a lot of, we get a lot of flack for covering AI video stuff, which is, we've talked about this many times before.
As if we are the one to create.
As if we are the ones to promote the fact that nobody should shoot anymore and that everything is created with prompts. We are just reporting, and we are trying to help our audience to prepare for the reality that, our industry is going to change, and whether you like it or not. But let's dive into this. So LTX Studio was something that was introduced, a couple months ago. We reported about it, and I think originally it was something to, correct me if I'm wrong, to generate like a storyboard and like a pre-visualization of an actual shoot with prompts. So basically, where Midjourney and all the others actually fell through with generative images was always to have the same character in a series of shots, like a series of stills. So if you try to regenerate the same person again in different circumstances, it was very hard to do. And LTX came along and said, well, actually, you can feed us a full script and we will generate a storyboard for you and it will have the same character and so on.
That's right.
And there was a public beta,
closed beta
actually, which I think we reported about. Masha did a long review, almost like an article about it.
There was no review. There was an article from her and from Omri about LTX Studio. So it's part of Lightricks, which is a big company. They're doing a lot of apps actually that we are not dealing with on daily basis. I think it's, but they have a lot of experience with AI in general.
But you talked to the CEO.
That's right. So I talked to the CEO, Zeev Farman, and
if you look at the thumbnail of this,
twin brothers,
I had to laugh. Like the thumbnail of this video interview, it looks like, have you seen Star Trek Nemesis?
I hate Star Trek.
Oh my God, we're still friends, but I let that one pass. But Star Trek Nemesis was this horrible movie from the Next Generation where Picard meets his son, which he never knew he had, and he looks nothing like him. The only thing is he's bald.
Sounds like Toy Story 3.
He's bald and he's younger, and it's exactly this in the thumbnail. The guy looks nothing like you, but he wears a black shirt like you and he's bald too. And it's funny. Anyway.
He's much friendlier, I have to say. You can see in this photo too. But Zeev is an extremely knowledgeable person. Yeah, you can find him writing and doing lectures about AI and other stuff. And those are four people that are running Lightricks.
Founders.
I founded the company. And of course, they identified an opportunity here. The generative AI is coming up very strong. And I think it's an interesting conversation. And again, guys, what we are trying to do here is to make us all aware of how our future is shaping up. So if you're interested or really hate AI or love AI, it doesn't matter. I think you should listen to this conversation. We are touching, first of all, the LTX Studio, and it is really a studio. I mean, they are using different models, AI models, in order to give you the possibility to control everything that you need, from doing the screenwriting all the way to the voiceover and to music and so on. The idea eventually will be, or what they are really proud of, is the mimic. I mean, you can really get lifelike expressions from a character now, which is of course also quite amazing. So this is a glimpse of how the future will look like, and I think it's interesting and important to listen to this interview. One thing that we tried to cover, and I was of course very concerned about, is to understand how the company, how do they work about the gathering the information, how the models are being trained, if it's public or not public resources. So it is, some of this is public, and they're also working with broadcasters around the world to get the material from them and train their AI on that. So, but they are aware of some of the consequences. They are fully aware of that different countries around the world have different type of laws regarding training your models, AI models. So it's interesting to see how this will shape. The other thing is, I try to understand everything that has to do with responsibility, because we can see already where this is taking us, all of this kind of generative AI video in general. And I'm not talking only about filmmaking, but in general. And Zeev's argument was that you can't really, it doesn't matter what you will try to do, because we spoke on a different episode about the responsibility of those companies actually. Who is responsible here if you have a tool like this? And we said it has to be very clear that the footage was generated by AI. And Zeev said that all those watermarks, marking, or whatever we think of currently is not enough, because that's very easy to bypass. His other argument was that the computing power that AI needs right now, he has it. But it won't be long until we will have at home all this computing power. And then it will be really up to individuals to literally create a lot of these generative AI videos at home without the need, or maybe, I'm talking more about deep fake and all of that thing. So actually, where is the responsibility? And they are not the ones that volunteer and come up with the responsibility. I'm writing a separate article about AI. Hopefully I can publish this week or next week. But one thing for sure, if we are looking at, and that was not in this conversation, but when I was trying to deep dive into this topic, we know that some countries or many people had issues with pornography. And the only way to try to block this was actually with the internet providers. They are the one that became in charge on blocking some domains or some, at least to reduce the amount of, especially child pornography. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe you have to involve also those providers, because otherwise it's going to take really, it's going to be really, really bad. And I know that there are different forms around the world that they're trying to bring together creators and professors and specialists and. But at the end, there are some people, I don't want to name names, but people who are doing electric cars and doing some missiles and so on. when they release their generative AI, those are actually free to do whatever you want with simply no restrictions. But
of course, actually to that, what you just talked about yesterday, and I guess we'll also report about that, but we don't have an article yet. OpenAI, Adobe, and Microsoft yesterday announced that they are supporting a California bill which is requiring watermarks on AI content.
Good.
So that's good, yeah, right? You have 3 of the major players in this field right now who want this because they are aware of it. At least OpenAI always, you have Sam Altman in his soft-spoken voice, and everybody makes everybody think he's your best friend. But at least, they show some sign of responsibility and have at least communicated this in the past as well. So this is like in character. But yeah, so they want this. And I think the problem with this is, it's just because I get your argument or his argument actually, that at some point everybody will be able to do this, but that's not a good reason to say we shouldn't do it, right? Because that's exactly the porn argument. It's the same thing, everybody can shoot this stuff, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be prohibited, right? And it shouldn't be marked as
he wants to do something, but I'm saying that he wants to do something that is meaningful and not meaningless.
Yeah, but if all the Western companies, and I'm talking about Western companies because those are the only countries that can get their crap together and actually decide something together, where you have the bad actors, some countries that don't care about this or actually want to use it to their benefit. And actually, even some Western countries some people in Western countries might want to use it in a kind of bad way to fake news and all that kind of stuff. But I think Western countries can come together and then create a system which is requiring those companies to watermark it. And when I say watermark, I mean not necessarily, it shouldn't be a visible watermark, because that's, can be removed. An invisible watermark that can be basically a website where you put a link and just say, tell me, is this AI generated or not? Now, the problem here is, what if it doesn't? What if it tells you it is not AI generated, but it is? You know what I mean? Like, what if it needs to be...
There's no 100%,
But that's the problem. Then people trust this tool and they will trust something. And like, talk about journalists, imagine you're a journalist, you get a photo of a politician, whatever, in anything that is controversial, and then you need to find out whether this is real or not. This is something that is literally around the corner, where we're right in the middle of it. And then they will put the link there, trusting this public tool that all the Western companies signed up for. And then it says, no, it's not AI. And you report about it, and it's like it's wildfire. It spreads everywhere around the world in news. And then maybe a year later, it turns out it was AI. It can this kind of stuff can start wars.
We certainly don't have the answer. Yeah, and I want to go back, because that's a huge topic, and this is really beyond the scope of this specific podcast and actually the existence of our site. And I want to go back to filmmaking and say we are being criticized of reporting about the stuff, and I really hope that some of you guys that are badly criticizing us, instead of asking us to ignore the development, please help us and come up with ideas how we can bring the community together. We can't really fight it. This is too late to fight. But if you have specific ideas how we can, or all together, how we can cooperate here in order to ease the pain or slow it down or still be relevant in, I don't know, in 5-10 years, let us know. In the article that I'm writing right now, I mean, being an ostrich is not an option. You can't say it's not happening. On the other hand, let's come up with even saying what within our industry, what professions do have the main chances to still survive.
I think a lot of it. I'm very surprised. I mean, we talked about this before, but I'm very surprised that the industry, film, video, whatever industry as a whole, is not more actively
involved in
trying to protect their stuff and actually be more upset publicly about the fact that all those models are trained on what we shot.
That's another aspect of the whole
No, but
thing.
it's like,
sure.
like industry associations, and this is a political thing. Industry associations, whether it's camera associations in different countries or other, like image generating associations, should actively lobby politicians to come up with ways to regulate that. Because if the next thing that will happen is that, like TV channels and big corporations are using AI. We talked about this before, to generate video content that without involving any of us. But there needs to be some way of compensation, almost like when I'm listening to Spotify, like even if they get little, but the maker of the music gets something. But if those music models that we reported about too, actually they were sued by the music industry. Why are those image generators not sued by the movie industry? That's what I don't understand.
Not only movie, but
yeah.
But anyway, we cannot of course take responsibility here, and that's beyond the scope of what we do. We will continue to report. We will try to continue to let our audience know what's happening so they can get prepared the best way and not be surprised suddenly. It's exactly what happened, 15 years ago with the DSLRs, and it's exactly what's happening with mobile phones. The main thing here is not to be surprised.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
And we will also continue to report about AI-related stuff that's useful for filmmakers to enhance what they're doing. And I'm not specifically talking about generative video, but I'm talking about all those other AI tools. Even voice isolation, like clean up and stuff like that.
AI already, even the mobile phone, we're using it day and night. The only thing is not always generative, and that's what really makes us very uncomfortable here.
Yeah, but there are a lot of things to enhance your workflow, and we will continue to report about it and support filmmakers to use those tools and learn about them. Yeah. Because that's,
But anyway, please head to our conversation, to the conversation that I had with Zeev. I think there's much to think of after listening to this.
Good. 2 short things, really short. We have 2 nice articles, educational articles from Masha, who's also writing about a lot of AI stuff, but she's also writing about a lot about educational stuff. And she wrote a nice long article about understanding ISO. Now, we all talk about ISO all the time. Sensitivity and these things, and together with Tal Lazar, who we have some of his courses on MZ, he's a very technical mind also. She worked on a long article explaining what ISO actually is, and it dives into some of his stuff, and it is also based on a conversation with him and where ISO actually comes from in the film area, and what it became into with digital cameras and what it actually is. And why are there such things as native ISO? What does it mean to push ISO and all those things? Because I think a lot of people just assume they know what it is, but it's not as easy. And just head over link in the show notes to learn about, understanding ISO and how to actually use it properly. And the other thing she reported about is a bit more less technical subject, but also very, very interesting, using texture in films and how to create a sensorial cinema experience. So she's really talking about how to craft films that are looking like, a plush toy, or looking more like a cold stone, or, like to really craft with your images and also editing and post-production a coherent texture of your film, which is much beyond just color grading and all that kind of stuff. And she's talking about images like paintings and what very famous painters like Van Gogh and others did, and how this was translated into movies with the example of Black Swan, The Lighthouse, and many, many other movies. So also Barbie is here. So really recommend you reading this article. Very, very nice piece. That's a little bit different from our usual tech stuff. Okay, and here we'll wrap it. It was a very long episode. We actually wanted to record a second one, which we might not do. And thanks everybody for listening. Hear you again next week on CineD Focus Check. And don't forget to give us a good rating. You can hear us everywhere on where you can get your favorite podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave a comment, leave a recommendation, send this podcast to a friend if you liked it. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Don't forget to leave comments. See you.